Welcome to another episode, Pound for Pound Box Report, episode 368. I am your host, Michael. Joining me, usual cast of characters, Gail from Communities Digital News, NYFights.com, as well as Daniel from the Inscriber and For Boxing News. What's going on, lady and gent?
Characters. Emphasis on characters.
For those who are new to the show or new to Pound for Pound Box Report, Pound for Pound Box Report live YouTube show, podcast, as well as blog/site discussing all things boxing. Excuse me, the motto is when boxing is good, we will talk about it. When it's bad, we will talk about it. Bottom line is, if it pertains to the sweet science, it will get discussed. Want to find out all information, please go to the site, p4pboxingreport.com. If you'd like to email us questions, comments, whatever, you can do so, p4pboxingreport, p4pboxing at p4pboxingreport.com. On the site, you will find links to where to where to catch the pages, various pages all over social media, be it Facebook/Meta, be it Twitter, be it the YouTube channel, Tumblr, IG. Also, where to catch the podcast. We're on basically all available platforms, be it Anchor, be it Apple Podcasts, be it Google Podcasts, be it Spotify, anywhere and everywhere else in between. Also, find links to where you can donate. I don't care if it's $1, $2, if you have some spare change on hand that you are able to spend. Do us a favor and send it our way. Let donation be the best nation in that sense. Um, Also, check out Beachbody on Demand. I still going to hit that. Technically, it's the first day of the summer. For those who want to get the body right, I strongly suggest you check out Beachbody on Demand. Programs are available for whatever fitness or health and wellness goals you are trying to attain. If you're looking for a strictly weightlifting program, I suggest you check out Live 4. Uh, Live 4 Part 2 is coming later on this summer. If you're looking for more variation, I suggest programs like 645, 6 weeks of the work, Bar Blend, Morning Meltdown, the old school Insanity Asylum, P90X 123 series are still up there. Many more programs that I would run out of fingers if I took time to talk about now. If you're looking for a boxing based program, please check out 10 Rounds. That is a 6 week program, 5 workouts, 5 days a week. 3 of those days are boxing based cardio. 2 of those days are weightlifting and resistance workouts. Very good program. I've gone through a couple of times. So yeah, check out Beachbody on Demand. At the very least, please do so to take advantage of the 14-day trial, and that is for 14 days you get free access to any and all programs on Beachbody on Demand. Let's get things going here. Not many fights to recap, so I'm going to include Gail and Daniel in all of our fights that we're going to discuss this evening. Uh, Two main fights on one card uh, took place on ESPN last Saturday to be specific, at the Big House at Madison Square Garden, headlined by unification bout at 175 pounds. Unified champion Arthur Berdybiev, who has BCIBF titles, fought WBO champion Joe Smith, and we talked about it last week. And Berdybiev was the favorite, no doubt, Gail, but I kind of had some suspicions that maybe Smith uh, could do something with his power because he can punch, and we've seen Bertabiev hurt before, right? Uh, None of that played out in the ring, as Bertabiev was he sliced and diced through Joe Smith like a surgeon. Easy work would be polite to in terms of describing it. Hurt him in the first round on numerous occasions, right? Put him down towards the end of the round. Finished him off in the in round two. Uh, Smith was discombobulated the first time he got hit with a hard punch. It kind of was a shock to his system, and he didn't know what to do. Bertabiev uh, was clinical. The excellence of execution. You'll like that, Daniel. Shout out to Bret Hart. Um, yeah, this was a dismantling, very impressive by Bertabiev. Um, he destroyed him. He made food out of Joe Smith.
I'm like you. I thought with the right game plan, the right approach, coming fast out of the gate, Joe Smith had a good chance as anybody that Beterbiev has faced. Holy crap, we were so wrong. Every cliche you can think of, and some that I won't get to. Boulder rolling downhill, slaughter, tsunami. I mean, Beterbiev absolutely overwhelmed Smith. Smith did come out quickly, did get busy, but the first time Beterbiev landed a decent shot on him, I just think Smith's cage was rattled so hard he never gathered himself again. Beterbiev is a punching machine. It's interesting because after the fight, he made a point of saying, I'm a boxer too. He doesn't want to be seen as just a sledgehammer on legs. He does have skills. He wouldn't have made 2 Olympic teams in Russia if he wasn't skilled. No doubt about it. And those skills have carried, but let's not deny what we see with our eyes. He is a strong, strong MF, and a guy with a good chin like Joe Smith couldn't take it. So you've got to think, unless you are a very, very skilled, defensively responsible fighter, Beterbiev going to be a problem for you. Now, when we talk about what's next, that's going to factor in. But it was an absolutely stunning performance. And we have to remind ourselves that a lot of American fans don't know a lot about him. And it was a smart thing to get him on ESPN, regular ESPN, and let the public see him and get excited about him so that we can see what's next. And probably a mandatory is going to come before unification, but we're going to look forward to that day.
Shout out to DCasp for checking this out live. He says, and I put his comments up here publicly. I thought it would last a few rounds longer. A lot of us did as well. Casp, thank you for checking this out. Please make sure to hit that like button. Please make sure to subscribe to us. Hit that subscribe button as well. I'll go to you, Daniel. Piggybacking off of Casper's comments, a lot of us thought it was going to go at least a few rounds as well, but it did not. To Gail's earlier point, relaying what Beterbiev said after the fight, he envisions himself as a complete boxer. It's easy to look at his physical stature, how he carries himself in the ring, and the power, right? And think he's just a full-on come forward banger / slugger, right? But if you really slow your mind down and really take a deep dive, a deep look into how he fights, there is a lot of technique and a lot of precision and some intelligence, some boxing IQ in what he was doing. Every shot was short and to the mark. Every shot was accurate. Every shot was fundamentally sound. So it wasn't just the fact that he has TNT in both fists. You have to know how to apply. You have to know how to get there with that power. And he does it arguably as well as anyone right now. All of his fights by knockouts. Again, he made easy work of Smith. Your thoughts?
Yeah, he did. He made pretty easy work of Joe Smith. Now, the first round actually had us look at what we thought we were going to get most of it, which was Joe Smith came out of the gate. He tried to put Beterbiev on the back foot, which he did a couple of times in the first round. Not really hurting, but putting him in the back foot. The problem was, unfortunately, his setup was a little bit lazy, and that's what ultimately caught him, because the first knockdown, he's throwing 2 straight jabs and trying to throw a right. But the first 2 jabs were pretty lazy, and they let Beterbiev hit him right in the temple. And if you know anything about temple shots, like if you hit the temple, you're not going to recover that easily. And it clearly showed in the other two knockdowns, especially the knockdown that Harvey Dock called the stoppage on, because Joe Smith looked like he was on Bourbon Street somewhere compared to being in the ring now. The fact remains that, yeah, Beterbiev is strong as a mule, but like you're right, Michael, he's set up. He noticed how lazy the jab of Smith was being in setting up his right hand, and he just needed that opening, land a good shot, good compact punches, nothing wild. And ultimately, it wound up, being easy work for Beterbiev at the end of the day, which is a good thing for him because, unfortunately, he is getting up there in age as far as what his body's going through. So a fight that would have went the rounds likely would not have been to his benefit, but he took care of business. And for Joe Smith, this isn't going to drop him off right away because we know what he was. He has a strong punch, pretty big body frame for a light heavyweight as far as the upper torso, and unfortunately, at the end of the day, his defensive lapses ultimately doomed him in. Doomed him against Bivol, it doomed them against Beterbiev. The question now when it comes to this is, what are we going to see next? Because there was one Anthony Yard in the crowd. And supposedly that match has already made as far as WBO mandatory. And if I saw what I saw on Saturday, I would say Mr. Yard tried to talk to Frank Warren, say, let me get a couple of more easy fights before I face Beterbiev again.
Absolutely. I'll go directly into that. Daniel and Gail. Daniel just alluded to it. Anthony Yard, who is a mandatory challenger by the BO at 175, he was in the building. He was Bertabiev was asked about that by the ESPN crew. What would he prefer, a fight with Yard or a fight with WBA champion Dmitry Bivol? He says he wants to go for unification, but before the fight, hours before the fight, there was an interview with Bob Arum, and I wrote about this for Three Kings Boxing. Please check out threekingsboxing.com, your source for pure unadulterated boxing information. Shout out to the crew over there, the head of the entire 3KB operation, 2K, aka Prodigy of Boxing Talk. Bo, who head of media relations, who you've heard on the show numerous times, fellow senior writers, Bakari, Jarrell, aka Big Cool, Red, who does all the editing for us behind the scenes. He was asked, Bertabiev would prefer a unification bout with Bivol. However, Arum, hours before the fight, said that he would like the winner to face Yard. He's already talked about the fight happening in October in London. I go back to you, Gail, and you can follow up. Daniel Yard and his trainer Tunde Ajayi was talking in a way that says the fight is going to happen next. My question is, do you think we will see that fight in October, or will all of a sudden you'll see something a few weeks from now, you'll see something where all of a sudden that fight will not happen, and they'll try to go straight for unification bout with Bivol, who, by the way, it looks like he has his next bout is going to be against his mandatory challenger, or should be his mandatory challenger coming soon, Zurdo Ramirez.
Well, the issue is less about Beterbiev and Bivol than it is about Bivol and Canelo, because we now know that Canelo and Golovkin 3 is on for Mexican Independence Day weekend, September 17th. Bivol and Canelo have a rematch clause. That's the big money fight. That's the big ticket fight. And like a lot of other things that happen in boxing, anywhere from 154 to 175, it still all revolves around Canelo. So it's possible that Bivol will buy himself time, and Beterbiev will get that mandatory out of the way if he wants to keep that belt and truly make it a unification fight down the road with Bivol. They get their mandatories out of the way first, both of them. It's a little tougher of a fight for Bivol than Beterbiev, in my opinion. I think he just goes through yard like a knife through butter. I mean, Kovalev dropped him. If Kovalev did it in his declining years, do we really think Bivol or Beterbiev's going to have any trouble with him? No. But it's a big money fight staged in the UK. Great for Beterbiev's exposure to that audience. So it's not a bad fight for him from a lot of aspects other than inside the ring. Bivol and Zurdo, that's a fun fight. I think Bivol would certainly prevail if he managed to take care of business against Canelo. It's hard to see him not taking care of the same business against Zurdo, but it could be fun while it lasts, and it's very makeable. That, though, then gives them time, in particular for Bivol, to see what happens with Canelo and Golovkin, candidly. And they both want unification, but there is a small issue with both Bivol and Beterbiev, is that although Beterbiev is now a Canadian citizen and is a native Chechen, Muslim Chechen, they are both ethnically Russians. And Bivol has talked about the fact that he isn't thrilled about facing a Russian fighter, but that if it comes right down to it and he wants to unify the division, he'll do it. But come on, who are we kidding? He'd love to get another big payday, and this time it would be a far bigger payday against Canelo, depending on what happens. So we're shuffling a lot of cups around, and there's a P under one of them somewhere, and we're just going to have to see where the dust all settles. And we're probably going to have to wait through mid-September to see what happens, to know where both these guys are going to go.
Quickly, Daniel, what say you?
Yeah, that everybody knows it's still, even though Bivol won, it still revolves around Canelo, which is true. But I did mention this earlier. I did mention it when we were talking about the victory. Now, this does open up the chance for Oscar to put Zurdo Ramirez in that situation with Bivol, and it won't be the same situation with Canelo, where for once that Bivol was actually the bigger guy. Zurdo's bigger. Zurdo probably has longer range, and he has a bit of a chip on his shoulder. So he might make it a little bit more difficult for Bivol, and there's a decent chance he might beat him. So plans can get derailed very, very easily. There is that rematch clause with Bivol and Canelo, but my question would be, if Bivol loses to Zurdo and Canelo beats Golovkin, would that go into the scenario where, okay, there's a rematch clause, one fighter is no longer the champion, so would Bivol have to go down to super middleweight? And that, once again, that just puts Canelo, once again, full A side. Once again, he wouldn't have that leverage and at super middleweight that Bivol gained at beating Canelo light heavyweight. But we'll probably know by the end of the year where the tea leaves fall.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a big question mark as to what will happen next between Beterbiev, Yard, with Bivol, Canelo as well. We'll certainly keep your eye on it. More than likely, if Arum is out there saying that he wants to fight at a certain time, at a certain date, at a certain locale, there are probably negotiations happening as we speak to make that a reality. But with the tantalizing prospect of a fight between Beterbiev and Bivol, both of these guys are their cachet, their profile is higher than ever right now. Bivol coming off of the win against Canelo in May. That's a really, really interesting and entertaining fight. You can't tell right now. No one can tell if they're really honest and objective here. Who will win? Just a boxer in Bivol versus the power boxing, I would say, of Bertabiev. A fascinating matchup for sure. But we'll keep you posted on what will happen on the undercard. Daniel, uh, I wasn't able to see this fight because I was at work at the time, but and we've excuse me, failed to talk about it last week with really any kind of depth, but had an interesting featherweight bout that took place between Robeisy Ramirez. Ramirez, highly decorated amateur, two-time Olympic gold medalist from Cuba, right? Lost his first professional bout, has steadily progressed uh, since his debut. Fought Abraham Nova, who Gail used to have as her avatar, is gone now. But yeah, Ramirez, from everything that I was reading, following my boxing Twitter feed the night of the fight and seeing highlights from it, he didn't just win, Daniel. From all indications, he was very impressive. Stopped him, starched him in the fifth, and for me, I'm watching. I'm like, okay, he has significantly improved. A and B, if he performed this well against Nova, how far can he go? I would mind in another 2, 3 fights him fighting for a title. You know, he's with Top Rank. Top Rank has another featherweight champion in Navarrete. I wouldn't mind seeing that fight later on this year.
It would be a fun fight. And this fight was very interesting to watch because obviously you mentioned the Cuban pedigree, and unfortunately, and Nova gained a lot of new fans from, let's say, the way he entered this last fight with the mascot, which unfortunately was conspicuously absent from this fight. But it was a situation where you had Nova trying to set up the jab as much as he could and just was not able to really get anything done in that fight, because every single time he tried to launch and he countered, Ramirez answered, and he answered with body punches. He answered with left hands. He was answering those shots, and by the looks of the fight, that was the way it's set up. Because if you see how that fight ended, in that left hand, was it? Yeah, the left hand, and the way Nova just fell, that punch was set up 3 rounds in advance. Just with the way he was moving, just with the way Nova tried to stay with the jab, but then slayed off of it, and then try to pick it up back on, but he was never able to really keep Rodriguez at bay. And it showed. Ramirez at bay. It showed, and it's going to be interesting to see because Cubans, obviously, they have the reputation of being really good technical fighters, but not being real crowd pleasers. This is a Cuban that looks like he wants to bang when he gets the opportunity. And that is right up Navarrete's alley. So if they maneuver it well and they have this, it will wind up being a very interesting fight. But we just have to see probably a couple of more before I see that he's fully ready for somebody like Navarrete.
Yeah, of course, I was referring to Navarrete, Emmanuel Navarrete, who's WBO champion. I'll go to you, Gail, your breakdown of Ramirez's win over Nova. And am I jumping the gun here for entertaining the possibility of a fight between Robeisy and Robeisy in the ring against the likes of Navarrete later on this year?
Absolutely not. Navarrete is tentatively scheduled to be back on the schedule in August, again here in San Diego, where he had his last fight, where he got a very nice Mexican and Mexican American fan turnout. So smart of Top Rank to come on back and make this bit of a American home base that Navarrete can own. It would be perfect timing for Ramirez to face Navarrete at that point. Top Rank did exactly the right thing with Ramirez and the polar opposite of what they did with Edgar Berlanga. After Ramirez had that splashy debut, two-time Olympian, hype, and he lost. Top Rank, pumped the brakes, gave him some development fights. He ended up with a new trainer, and they worked on his craft. He had all the fundamentals in place from his Olympic experience, but Cuban amateurs need to unlearn, like a lot of very skilled amateurs, that tendency to just think about tapping somebody because it rolls up points. That doesn't work in the professional ranks. And Ramirez has learned his lessons well without the pressure of having to perform under the hot lights that happened to Berlanga without the fundamental background. So it all worked beautifully for Ramirez. And hey, yep, I enjoyed the Nova ride. I thought the mascot was a genius piece of promotion. Do take note, everybody. I change my avatar every week, okay? I have a theme every week. But yep, I absolutely did have the mascot. I'm not sure the mascot was present in New York last week. If he wasn't, I don't know whether that's good luck or bad luck or what kind of luck, but it was not a lucky punch. Daniel's exactly right. Ramirez set that up, in genius fashion. And what I really liked was Ramirez and how he carried himself after the fight. He's confident without being obnoxious. One of the first tweets he posted after the fight was, in case you haven't been paying attention, I'm a pro fighter now, pro fighter in caps. Right on. That's exactly right. He is El Tren Ramirez, the train. And let's keep that train rolling. I would love to see that train roll right here into San Diego. That's an all-action fight. I don't think it really hurts either guy to lose, and that sets up perhaps a rivalry trilogy. Navarrete has had trouble finding decent opponents. This vaults Ramirez into the spotlight with a new audience who may not know him very well. It's all playing out beautifully for him. And after it just also proves, just because you lose your debut doesn't mean you're doomed forever. A lot of great fighters over the years have lost their debut. I believe Bernard Hopkins lost his debut, correct?
Yeah.
Cotto also lose his debut. So if that's the case, Ribisi, you're really, really good company. Good on you. As for Nova, he's got some thinking to do. He needs to shore up his skills. He has been sort of equal parts well matched and well promoted, but the cracks were showing on Saturday.
126 is not a loaded division. There's not one standout fighter. At the very least, Ramirez put the featherweight division on notice, on alert that he is coming. And yeah, based on what we've seen and from how Gail and Daniel described his performance, and based on what highlights I've seen of him and read, put him right in that picture. It put him right up there in the landscape of, and yeah, he fits right in there with the top fighters in that division. Let's move on to some news here, because those are the only two fights we're going to recap this week. Earlier this morning, at least U.S. time, you had the introductory press conference for the rematch between Alexander Usyk and Anthony Joshua. That rematch is going to take place August 20th in Saudi Arabia. Just for anybody who wants to discuss it, talk about it. Your observations about the press conference, quite a lengthy stare down, seemed to have some intensity behind it at the very end, as both guys seemingly didn't want to be the first one to turn their heads. Your thoughts on what you saw?
Well, this press conference took place in Saudi Arabia, so not the most convenient time wise for those of us in the United States, not quite as inconvenient to the crowd in Great Britain. Um, both these guys did their job. They know they're both professionals at the highest level. They know what to do. They make their thanks. Usyk's been through it. Let's remind ourselves that Usyk has been at war, literally, not the kind of war that we like to talk about in the ring. He has been defending his country. So to shift his mindset now back to sport, which must seem like a walk in the park to him at this point, that's a lot for him to be processing and handle. So I filter a little bit of what we saw today through that. Joshua's always very gracious, can be intense, can, want to put on a show. He gets it. Both of them do. Interesting to see Robert Garcia there at Joshua's side in Saudi Arabia, especially given the fact that he's got the man he says is the best fighter in his entire stable in California fighting this weekend. So, that's something a little crazy we'll talk about later in the show. And Garcia said all the right things. And he said, I see a different Anthony now. Different the way he thinks, different the way he talks. The first question I would ask, given the chance, would be different from what? I mean, how much experience has Garcia had seeing him before or assessing him before? I'm seeing this new trainer situation with Garcia literally weeks before a fight as just so odd, but we'll see how this all plays out. I would be remiss if I didn't at least acknowledge the fact that we're talking about a bit of sports washing here. Sports washing being a nation with a ton of human rights violations and issues, bringing in a big money event to make them seem more user-friendly. They are not. Even if I was inclined to go, which I am not, to Saudi Arabia, in my case, I've got 3 strikes. A, American, B, female, 3, journalist. Nope, I will be there. But I'm sure a lot of our American counterparts will. And will I watch? Yes. Will I write about it? Yes. It's a significant event in our sport. This is the heavyweight champion, unified heavyweight champion, the only guy with belts in the glamour division besides Tyson Fury, who we all know isn't retired and waiting to face the winner. So I find this very troublesome on a lot of levels, but here we are.
And part of what you call that sports washing included featuring a woman as part of the press event talking about the sport. Coincidence? I think not. I'll go to you, Daniel. And before I go to you, shout out to Los Libertinos Boxing, Los Libertinos podcast. Hope to have him. I'm gonna try to get in contact with you because he reached out to Gil and I about having both of us on together on your podcast. I gotta get in contact with each other about that. Do some networking. You mentioned Robert Garcia was there. The fighter that you was talking about, who he said is the best fighter in his stable is one Jesse Bam Rodriguez, who is fighting this weekend. We will preview his fight with Srisakat Sorgungusai. But I'll go to you, Daniel. What did you gather from today's press event between Usyk and Joshua? Usyk, who's often rather jovial, seemed to be a little more serious, understandably, given what's going on in his country. And Joshua seems early, the focus is there as well.
Yeah, and this is a very interesting site to actually put it in. We know this fight's going to be in the Middle East, so that's unfortunately not surprising. And you could tell that the sports washing conversation was very prevalent, and Anthony Joshua did not want to get involved in it. Did not want to get involved in it, which tells you that they know that most of what they're doing is a propaganda piece for the Saudi government. But as far as the fight goes, we need to see that question that Gail last answered. What different Anthony Joshua is he speaking about? Because is it a situation where he's just seeing him being a little bit more aggressive? Is it a situation where he's being more focused than what he heard before with McCracken, or is it just different, the fact that Anthony Joshua's here now? Especially when you're coming into this fight, especially with the way that Joshua lost to Usyk. We have to remember, folks, it wasn't a Hail Mary shot that won the Brock and Joshua. It wasn't like that with Andy Ruiz. It was a systematic beatdown. And that's going to be telling how their mindset's going to be in weeks coming into the fight, especially now with Usyk. How focused is he actually going to be in the fight? Like I mentioned it. He's been in literal war. And how drastically does that change your mindset from going to a sport where, it talks about being at war, talks about being a warrior, and then you go and you actually become a warrior? That's going to be an interesting tell, and we just got to see how Robert Garcia prepares Anthony Joshua for this fight, even though I think he's probably not going to do enough to win.
Yeah, him having a attitude adjustment is one thing, but there are also some technical things that he has to deal with, him and Garcia, that they have to resolve. How are they going to cope with the movement? How are they of Usyk? How are they going to cope with the jab of Usyk, the southpaw style Usyk, right? Because he used all of those attributes to gain the early lead in their first fight September last year. And after Joshua made a bit of a brief rally in the middle rounds, Usyk kind of gathered himself and pulled away late, to the point that he had Joshua wobbly in the final seconds. And if that was a 15-round fight, or if that final round would have lasted a minute longer, there's a good chance he would have taken Joshua out. So there's a lot that AJ has to answer going to the rematch. And I see some of the comments in the chat. Shout out to, again, Los Libertinos. Shout out to Life Is. We want to I'll just ask it here, Gail. Daniel, I'm not going to pull it up right now, but should we address the comment of Life Is, yay or nay?
It is interesting. It is an interesting topic.
It's a guilt by association issue. I'm not sure what it proves. I mean, I don't think anybody has tied any specific acts to Fury, so I'm a little perplexed by it.
And as you're talking, Gail, I'll put it up right now.
Yeah,
Life Is, as he says, he asked, did we talk about Fury being denied entry in the U.S. due to association with Daniel Cunningham?
I think it's a leverage move by the authorities, frankly. Fury isn't the target. It's like flipping some gang member's associate, if you will. It's a little bit of a dramatic way to put it. I mean, Fury is essentially an American U.S. resident at this point. He lives in Henderson, Nevada. The last time he got in the ring, he was introduced as being from Henderson, Nevada, not Great Britain, Nevada,
Mm-hmm.
Henderson, basically Vegas, okay? And I think that his associations with Kinahan, in his mind, are a bit in the rearview mirror as he's moved on. But you know, it is going to be troublesome for him. Again, he has not confirmed that he's unretired, if he was ever retired. You know, the last we heard out of his mouth is he was retired. The remarks he's made recently aren't specific to boxing. You know, he could be having another WWE performance, you know, for all we know, or some kind of crazy exhibition to make a few bucks. I don't think we've heard the last of this. I'm not sure it's going to end up being that big a deal. I think it's a diversion, distraction tactic right now. And to the point here of the comment, war crimes the U.S. is part of. I'm not sure
I
exactly
get
what
you,
war
Los
crimes we're talking
Libertinos.
about, but it's not.
I
Yeah.
get you, but here's the thing, and you have a point, but what does that and is the U.S. hypocritical? Yeah. Should you be called out for it? Yeah, but what is the correlation between that and the fight? That would be my only pushback.
And the difference, in my opinion, is you're talking about the Saudi government, the Saudi ruling class is staging the fight. The United States government does not stage boxing cards. They aren't putting up the money. They aren't building the ring. They aren't promoting the fight. They aren't selling the broadcast rights. By the way, the reason that we didn't initially hear a darn thing about broadcast rights is because as part of the package, the Saudi rulers get to sell those rights for additional money to recoup their investment. So there's a big dividing line, in my opinion. Are any government hands clean? Oh, hell no. No, they aren't. No government his hands are clean when you're talking about money, power, influence, access. But the Saudi government does take it to a new level.
If this was Arum, right, or any U.S. promoter staging a card out there, I would be okay, right on. I would be right there with you, right? Your point will even be more valid than it is now. Unfortunately, as it pertains here, it doesn't. Again, there's no correlation. That is Hearn's axe to bear, right? And all parties involved there. Usyk's team, Joshua's team, they're gonna have to sleep. Hearn is gonna have to find a way to sleep well given that backdrop. Again, are you right to bring that point up? Absolutely. But that is on them. They're gonna cross with that's their thing to cross. They're gonna have to deal with it. That's on them. If you're making your point about U.S. Saudi Arabia relations, again, I will put that in there. If this was a U.S. promotional thing, if ESPN was televising it, right, I would be right there with you. But again, U.S. Saudi relations, how is it? I don't understand how that computes vis-a-vis this fight specifically.
I get where he's coming from, but I'll start on the Fury thing first. Yeah, this is just a leverage play. Like they know that Fury's not the one actually being that deeply involved in Kinahan's dealings, and the only reason the media could deny him entry is because he's a U.S. resident, but that still makes him a British citizen until he renounces that citizenship and gets U.S. citizenship. They can are still able to do that. The only way it affects his career mainly is if this is prolonged, because then it limits what he needs to do. That at that point, he better hope that Joshua wins, because then they could put the fight in the UK. But if Usyk wins, yeah, then you're kind of out of luck. You're kind of hoping then the WWE stages more things in the UK and, of course, Saudi Arabia, because that's probably the two events that he's going to show up at. The main problem, unfortunately, is that it's always going to get ugly when a government gets involved. Like I said, we have a government involved in getting a fighter out of the way. And when it comes to this situation with Usyk and Joshua, yeah, we have a government staging the event. The Saudi government has pushed a lot. Like I mentioned, WWE, they have a 10-year contract with the WWE for 2 events, and they've already shown that they're willing to play hardball. They held wrestlers hostage over money. So they've already shown that they're willing to play hardball on that front. And should we mention the situation with Live Golf, where they basically bribed a whole bunch of golfers to leave the PGA?
That part.
Yeah. So basically, that they're gonna try to buy their way into it. Does it absolve the US a lot of what we do? No.
Nope.
Oh hell no. Oh hell no. I'll put it to you this way. Colombia just elected their first leftist leader. And there's already running bets on when the US is going to stage a coup against that leftist leader. That pretty much tells you how much of the world views the US when it comes to foreign relations and the things we have done.
I mean, you have to keep in mind, and no offense, Lord, we lost that you're making a righteous point, but that battle has been lost a long time ago. Keep in mind, the United States and U.S. promoters were the same folks who were staging world title bouts in apartheid South Africa.
The main thing, this is the main thing when it comes into how things are viewed in the world. Every few years, the world has a villain. And those villains tend to be dictated by who is the superpower at the time. South Africa is when the US and USSR, they were the superpowers. Right now, Saudi Arabia is with the US being the superpower. And like I said, we can get into a whole lot of details, particularly 15 of the 19 people that were involved in 9/11, for example. The fact that maybe Saudi Arabia doesn't really practice Islam, they practice a weird version of it.
Yeah.
So there's a whole lot of mess that falls into it. But at the end of the day, Mike is right. Like Eddie Hearn has to sleep at night with that. Usyk's team has to sleep at night with that. Joshua's team has to sleep at night with that. They decided this was the way to go. They could have had to fight in the UK. They could have.
And it would have been a huge money fight. But, Hearn took this kind of heat when he staged AJ and Ruiz there. And he said, listen, my job as a promoter is to earn the most possible money for my fighters. End of discussion. That's the only thing he filters it through. And these guys are willing to write a hella big check. That's the only real consideration in his mind is that. I also imagine that now that Joshua has this extraordinary part ownership deal with DAZN, that Hearn's thinking, okay, well, he might lose, but I'm going to earn him a shit ton of money. We're going to make a shit ton of money for DAZN, which means Joshua also gets a piece of that earning. So he earns a shit ton of money times 2 revenue streams, in addition to all the other promotions that he's got, even if he loses. And he's still a box office draw. So other than his pride and his record, not small things, there's no downside for Joshua. Usyk, I think, will perform exactly like he did before. Maybe he gets a little more resistance, under Garcia, but I just, I just don't think you turn a guy from one style to another. You've got to use what he's got. Joshua is not Bam Rodriguez. He's never going to be.
Yeah, ultimately, what we have here is that when I say when boxing is bad, we will talk about it. I'm not just referring to when a fighter performs poorly or gets knocked out as of the seedy side of the sport. It's about money at the end of the day, and in the dollar trumps morality, trumps consciousness, right? And that's what you're having here. Appreciate the comment, Los Libertinos. At the very end, yeah, a lively conversation. I'm not mad at it. You also went on to say, I'm going to read this out. Maybe we should take a lesson from her. Hopefully, he can stay consistent and be above politics and look out for his fighters and himself. That's the thing. He's looking out for himself. He's not necessarily staying above cop politics. Ultimately, this is about himself and about the money that he can earn. And in that regard, he's no different than any other promoter, good, bad, indifferent. Unfortunately, that's the way it is. That's the way it is. Yeah. When we had the women's show, Ladies Love Boxing podcast last year, a shout out to Minnie Larry. She said she refused to watch the rematch between Ruiz and Joshua because of the issues in Saudi Arabia and Khashoggi. I respect that. I'm not going to push back against her. That was her right, and I affirm her decision in that regard. Something tells me she's not going to watch this fight either. I affirm her decision, her stance on that. I'm not going to knock Gail's decision that she's going to cover, that she's going to watch the fight. People have their different opinions on that. All of that is in the play here, including the truth you told here in the terms of your comments. Again, ultimately, that is going to be the bear that everybody involved in this, they're going to have to cross. They're going to have to live
And I
with
just
themselves
want
on
to
that.
add for the record, I am watching because I am being paid to watch.
Yeah,
It's part of my job, assuming I am assigned to cover the fight. If I am not, then I have a different decision to make. And Minnie, we know to be a woman of principle, good for you.
indeed. So, yeah, lively discussion. We'll probably talk more about. We will probably have more to discuss about that as the closer the fight draws, right? So, yeah, again, I appreciate the comments here. The game of competitive banner. I don't take anything personal about it. It is what it is. Let's move on to some other news events. In our discussion about breakdown about Rabisi Ramirez's win over Nova, Gail, you mentioned how Ramirez, a highly decorated Cuban amateur, has had to make the adjustments from the traditional Cuban amateur style to the pros, right? It looks like we're going to have to see that again in the form of Andy Cruz. Cruz being the boxer, the most outstanding boxer of the 2020 Olympic Games, won the gold medal. I can't. Oh man, correct me, help me out here, guys. Who was the American that he beat to win the lightweight gold medal against?
Damn it, I forgot. Okay, shut up.
It'll come to me. It'll come to me. I'll get to it. But yeah, Cruz backstory here. Andy Cruz
Keyshawn
was supposed
Davis.
to.
Keyshawn
There you
Davis.
go. Thank you, Keyshawn Davis.
Sorry to be
Cruz
slow on the trigger there.
Cruz was supposed to make his professional debut in Mexico. Now that Cuba has made the decision to allow pro boxing. Cruz was supposed to make his pro debut in Mexico last month. The word that week, but you didn't see him fight on a card of Cubans making their professional debuts. The official word was that it didn't happen because there was some animosity, some back and forth between Cruz and his trainer. Turns out that could have been a fabrication, as we now are finding out that Cruz, who was supposed to take place in a tournament in his home country, starting yesterday, as a matter of fact, he is not in Cuba. The word is that he's trying to he is abroad. The word is that the aforementioned Robeisy Ramirez and Yordenis Ugas are trying to set things up behind the scenes to get him to the United States. Ismail, and what I'm hearing is, you can check it out on 3kingboxing.com. The plan is to get him to the United States, where he will be trained by Ismail Salas. The word is, Gail and Daniel, that is developing. Once they get him here, the plan is to have him have his professional debut in the United States, and just basically your thoughts on that. The fact that it looks like we're going to see Cruz here in the States, and the work that's being done behind the scenes to get him to America.
Was interesting when he got pulled from this tournament. The word was he got pulled because he had attitude problems, which set off a bit of a firestorm. Like, attitude problems? What is that? A fighter doesn't have attitude problems once in a while. But it appears that was the cover story, because he was, getting on the road and using the cover of the tournament to get himself into the United States. So we don't know exactly where he is, although the Cuban government has been a little more accommodating of its fighters turning from amateurs to professionals and fighting outside Cuba. It's not like they just let them do their business and manage their own careers. You've still got to leave the country. You've still got to defect. And certainly the United States is fairly welcoming in these cases. So the word is that he is going to defect. He is going to join that increasingly impressive pool of talent down there in Florida with Salas. And we'll see what happens. It sounds like he's between stations right now. And I'm sure for his own safety, he's keeping it close to the vest.
Yeah. In situations like this, whenever there's a Cuban defection, if they're not going by the raft, they're gonna go to a meeting country. Normally, if it's either Mexico, Bahamas, somewhere along the lines, so they're gonna find a middle country to have this dealing with, which tells you just how far this decision for Cuba to loosen the relations really is. They're loosening enough, but you're still stuck in that part of Cuba where you still feel compelled to defect. So it's a very interesting story, and like I said, he'll probably pop up within the next 3 months. It's normally these things take about 4 or 5 months before he shows up in the U.S.
And we'll certainly keep an eye on what is very much a developing situation. Please stay in tune to Pound for Pound Box Report, and stay in tune to 3 King Boxing. I wrote a personal article on this, and we'll keep you updated with continual stories. We just a few minutes ago discussion about Usyk and Joshua rematch kind of turned into a larger discussion about morality and principles. Speaking of morality and principles, you have the return of one Jarrell Big Baby Miller, right? We all know the story of Miller, unless you've been sleeping under a rock or not a hardcore fan. Miller, who was in line to fight Anthony Joshua in June of 2019, had to be dumped from that bout after failing a drug test. He was replaced by Andy Ruiz, who, as we all know, upset Joshua winning the belt. Big Baby was suspended, tried to get back in the ring, tried to fight again. Of course, he was suspended again, tested positive for a litany PEDs to the point where it looks like he was taking an old East German block cocktail of illegal drugs. Uh, been suspended for a good while. Last we heard of him, he was serving as a sparring partner for Tyson Fury, helping him prepare for the fight against Dillian White. Well, we find out now that he's going to fight. Um, he has a bout coming up in June on June the 23rd. Matter of fact, 2 days from the time that we're recording this in Argentina. Part of the ironically, and what's ironic about this part of the uh, uh, WBA's AKO, the Drugs Festival in Argentina. I'll go to you, Daniel. Get some information on who exactly he's fighting.
All right, let me go into boxing because I didn't know about this until Gail mentioned it. But of course, it has to be Argentina that Big Baby Miller pops up. And yeah, Argentina is not. They do weird things. They do weird things. But let me just see here. I had the name here. It is a journeyman fighter. So it is going to be German. It is going to be an Argentino. So let me just see.
But he is ranked as the #1 heavyweight in Argentina.
Oh dear gosh.
Which is apparently not a real hotbed of talent. Yeah, he's an absolute journeyman. His name is Ariel Esteban Bracamonte, 29 years old, orthodox fighter, 6'3", has weighed in the anywhere between 260 and 290 in his last several bouts. Yeah. How the hell Jarrell Miller ended up on this card? I think Gilberto Mendoza needs to have some explaining to do.
Look at this. Actually, let me read this very quick. Apparently, this is part of the WBA's Knockout 2 Drugs Festival.
Yeah, this is an annual 2-card tournament they do every year, which is essentially a say no to drugs sort of promotion.
Oh, the irony giving Big Baby's back.
Miller on the card,
background.
right? So I get it that if Miller is cleared to fight,
And if he's clean,
and if he's clean, I get it. If he's cleared to fight, he wants to come back. He wants a nice, quiet, offshore fight out of the spotlight, no TV, although it is on Argentinian TV. Tim Boxeo's got the goods, so you can look it up. Yeah, I mean, I get it. If he's served his time, right, and he follows the rules, he's permitted to fight. Do I have to like it? No. Do any legitimate guys in the division need to face him if they don't want to? No. But this card, seriously, Mr. Mendoza, what the hell are you thinking? That we wouldn't catch on to this? And there is a news release and an article on the WBA's website, WBAboxing.com. Look it up. It's there. Miller's name is not prominently mentioned whatsoever, but it wasn't long before word got out and the chatter started among boxing media circles that Miller was scheduled to be on this card. Beyond that, I'm just so dumbstruck by how this has been constructed and put together. Clearly, nobody who could put 2 and 2 together about how this looked was advising anyone at the WBA. Just when we thought the WBA was getting its shit together, starting to consolidate all these, crackerjack fake toy belts, right? Winnowing it down, making an actual attempt, which I applaud, and then they go step on it and do this. Unbelievable. You cannot
Gail,
this shit
look
up.
at the WBA. Again, this is the WBA. Look what they've done in the aftermath of stripping Josh Taylor. Yeah, they got a fight set up for the vacant belt, WBA junior welterweight belt, but they got was it 1, 2 different world title eliminators also, WBA eliminators also happening in and around the same time, and none of them
Yeah.
featuring Regis Progress, who they got him on standby in case someone gets injured. It tells you all you need to know. They haven't got, yeah, in the light, they do all this stuff to consolidate titles, but then in the dog, they do that when it comes to their junior welterweight title, and they try to slip Big Baby Miller fighting without anyone thinking that no one will not pay any attention. Come on.
Yeah, this is an interesting thing. I'm looking at this right now because just the way that Big Baby Miller has faltered as Limited. Remember, he's still under suspension from the Nevada State Athletic Commission. I think until this month, but the only gets reinstated, so he has to pass VADA testing. And he actually was supposed to fight on Triller this month, but luckily that fell apart. But it's just really, really, really surprising that Mendoza really thought that they could get away with putting somebody that what's the best analogy I want to use this? It would be like putting Yokozuna in a diet commercial. Pretty much that. This is just, it's kind of sad on one end, but then at the end, but it's Mendoza. It's the WBA. They're going to do some fun shit, whether we like it or not.
Yeah, you got some your voice is sounding really choppy. I'll read a comment. Daniel, and read a comment here. He says from DCAS. He says that WBOKO to drugs. They should feature the judge in the Michael Fox card because she was clearly on drugs. Scoring the fight.
Well played, Donovan. Well played. Yes.
Not only was she clearly on drugs with a scorecard that she handed down, I just put it out there. She was clearly racist too, based on her tweets, her social media posts.
Oh yeah, that one blew up spectacularly.
I'm just saying. So yeah, just a complete mess, all around. We know life. He's addressing it right now, life. So he'll get that fixed. So yeah, just that mess. And one more news note to bring to attention to everyone here, and that is it's official. Andy Ruiz fighting Luis Ortiz September 4th. The locale escapes me right now. Gonna be on Fox pay-per-view. I can't remember.
Los Angeles, California.
LA, thank you.
At the Crypto.com
At the Crypt.
Center. At the Crypt.
Yeah, you still have a little bit of technical issues on your end, Daniel. So I'll go see you on this one. Until you get that resolved. If this fight was happening 2 years ago, I would think it'd be more of a 50-50 matchup because both Ruiz and Ortiz can box. Ruiz has the faster hands. I think Ortiz has the bigger punch, but I didn't like the way Ortiz has been looking in his last couple of fights. I question whether he still has legs, right? And because of that, I'm going just first observation. I'm going with Ruiz here. Even though he got knocked down twice against Chris Arreola, he took control of that bout in the second half of the fight. And I think that his hand speed and his inside fighting and his ability to counterpunch and fight within the flyer, I think that would be too much for Ortiz. Just your first thought in the fact that this fight is now being made.
You know, at first, I kind of snickered about the whole thing, and Snickers was a unintended pun. The more I think about it, it's the right matchup. You know, in a lot of ways, they're kind of passing each other in their careers. They've got their own various problems that puts them on somewhat of an even playing field. It's two really big guys. It's kind of a trash-tastic fight. it's being put on Labor Day weekend. So, PBC clearly understands this is maybe a limited draw of interest, but they will put fans in the seats in LA on a Labor Day weekend, just for the hell of it. Two big ass heavyweights wailing away. That's a casual fan's dream. Seriously. I don't hate it. In the end, I'm surprising myself by saying, I don't really hate it. Am I going to haul my ass up there to see it? Well, talk to me later about that.
I think it has a chance to be, fairly entertaining bout because both guys are going to be right there to hit and to be hit. I hear your mic issues have been resolved, Daniel. So a quick breakdown of this fight.
This is the perfect crossroads fights for both of these guys. Because unfortunately, Andy Ruiz has not really been to the point of being challenging for the world title again after his loss in the Joshua rematch. And unfortunately, Luis Ortiz, his battles with Father Time, and he has won. He has not looked good also in his last fight. So this is a good crossroads fights for them. It will be entertaining. I am disappointed that this is going to be pay-per-view, but this should be an entertaining fight. And whoever wins out is probably going to be good as far as the WBC rankings can go, which ultimately depend upon what Fury's going to do.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, this is a fight that I'm kind of interested in. I'll watch for sure. And it should, on paper, it has the makings of being a fairly a decent scrap. Let's move on to talk about some fights coming up this weekend. A low key, very very good card that's taking place in San Antonio on the Zone. Headlined by Jesse Rodriguez, who we mentioned briefly early in the show, fighting Srisakat Sorrungwasai. But I'm going to save that fight for last. Going to go to you on this one, Gail, and talk about some undercard fights here. MJ Akhmadaliev, who is unified junior featherweight champion. He holds the IBF and WBA super titles, fighting his mandatory Ronnie, or one of his mandatories, Ronnie Rios. And coming off what Stephen Fulton did last weekend against Roman, all eyes are on Akhmadaliev. Fulton has talked about fighting him in a fight for all, in a showdown for all the belts at 122 pounds. Thoughts on his upcoming battle with Rios? I think that Rios is tough, but I think that Akhmadaliev, all around the better fighter, faster hands, more complete. Rios will make him go rounds, probably take him the distance, but I think that MJ, if he's on his game, if he doesn't take Rios lightly, he's the favorite.
No question about it. Listen, Rios will give a good, honest effort. He may score some shots, may win some rounds, but in the end, Akhmadaliev is just way too skilled, and he'll prevail over Rios. And it may go the distance. Rios is damn tough, and he deserved this shot. He has been in the trenches. He puts fans in the seats. He's got a huge following in Southern California among his Orange County fans. He's part of that Golden Boy contingent right up there with Rocha and Jojo Diaz and, kind of that crew. So he's paid his dues. He's done everything Golden Boys asked him to do. So this was, he really earned this in so many ways. So good luck to him. But man, we saw Akhmadaliev take care of Danny Roman. And then we saw what Fulton did to Roman, which was amazing. None of us expected him to have that easy a time with Roman. So the only fight to make is Fulton and Akhmadaliev. That will be a barn burner, and look forward to that. But it'll still be with Rios an entertaining fight and well worth watching. This whole card is an absolute fight purist card. Great, great matchups among some serious talent.
Absolutely, absolutely, 100%. Also on this card, Daniel, the return of Julio Cesar Martinez. Last time we saw him in the ring, he was not just on the losing end, but he was getting beat up by Roman Gonzalez in a fight at 115 pounds. The interesting thing is that um, he went up to 115 pounds. This fight took place as he came up as a substitute opponent when Estrada had to bow out in a trilogy with Roman due to COVID. But even though he was moving up in weight, he failed to make the 115-pound weight limit. He's coming back down to 112 to fight McWilliams Arroyo. My question is, can he make 112 comfortably?
I
Put
think
that
that
into the mix coming off of the loss after how he got beat up and pounded by Roman. I think that Martinez is vulnerable here. I would be once a bit surprised if McWilliams Arroyo would score what many would deem an upset.
nobody would blame it because McWilliams Arroyo is a very serviceable fighter. He is on the echelon when it comes to 112 and 115. So it wouldn't surprise me. We have to see how the weigh-in happens with Martinez because I slightly want to give him the benefit of the doubt that when he got put into the position Chocolatito, he probably slacked off a little bit as far as doing the extra work that he normally had to do to make weight because of those 3 pounds, but that impacts a lot. So you have that going into it, but more importantly, you mentioned it, the mental state of Martinez. How is he after, even though he gave a valiant effort, he never stopped fighting his fight against Chocolatito, but it was still thoroughly outclassed by Chocolatito. How he will fare mentally and against somebody in McWilliams Arroyo who is not a pushover. McWilliams Arroyo will make you work for a win against him, and there's a good chance that he may lose. I don't think it'll probably ultimately happen, but I would not be surprised if McWilliams Arroyo leaves as a champion.
I want to get both of you into the discussion about the last 2 fights here. Start off with you, Gil. Jessica McCaskill, one of the few undisputed champions in the sport, men or women. She captured undisputed titles at 147 by scoring an upset over Cecilia Brækhus. I believe that fight took place in 2019, August, in the zone. She beat her in the rematch. She's made one defense of those belts, I believe. And she returns to the ring to fight on this card, fighting Alma Ibarra. Ibarra earned the opportunity when she defeated Candy Wyatt in the WBA title eliminator last year, August. I covered that fight of 4-3 Kings, and Ibarra wants to fight McCaskill. She's highly motivated. She does not like McCaskill's trainer, manager, boyfriend, Rick Ramos, who, as many insiders know, is not one to hold back his tongue and is one who's known for talking trash privately and publicly to fighters or to potential opponents of his fighters, right? When Ibarra beat Wyatt last year, afterwards she made note to mention Ramos, that she says basically she's going to see him. They can't avoid her now, right? So the motivation is there, coupled with her skill level. I think that not only does she have a heck of a chance to beat McCaskill, I'm just going to put the chips on the table. I'm calling for I'm calling that she will beat McCaskill. I think she has it in her. She's naturally bigger and stronger. She's taller. She's longer. And plus, when you are a fighter who is focused keenly on fighting, focused and motivated on fighting someone, who have a great desire to fight someone, you tend to bring your A game when you see him or her in the ring. I think that's going to be the case in San Antonio. Uh, at the very least, she's going to give McCaskill pure D hell, and I think she's going to outright beat her.
Oh, yeah, I think it's going to be a grudge match all the way. And Ibarra is a very good fighter. She's a little older, but that's not unusual in women's boxing. In the bigger weight divisions, anybody fighting much above welterweight, you just have trouble finding opponents. So don't let the 11 fights on her record fool you. She beat the same opponent McCaskill just beat, Candy Wyatt. In fact, I was at that fight because it took place here in San Diego. She looked good. They did go the distance. It was an 8-round fight, but she had it well in hand. She really should have gotten a shutout on all the cards. She got a shutout on one and virtual shutout on the other two. But she hasn't, and she has also got a win over Maricela Cornejo out of Los Angeles. They had a fight in Puerto Rico. So it's an interesting opponent. You know, this is not your typical stay busy opponent. She's ranked number 1 in Mexico, but again, out of a limited talent pool. I really think you're right. The big issue is going to be size because she is the naturally bigger fighter. She is 5'9", so fairly tall for a female fighter. That's a 3-inch height difference on McCaskill. Now, McCaskill would be well advised to do what any shorter fighter should do with a taller opponent, go to the body. Let's see how she does it. She does have the capability of doing that. She's good and strong. She delivers terrific offense, but she does need to be careful and not let her dislike for Ibarra get ahead of her. I wish McCaskill was a little busier. Unfortunately, she is really holding out for only big money fights. How this one got made, I'm not quite sure. But at least she is finally making a title defense after being out of the ring 15 months. She has a really nice career as a commentator brewing. She does excellent work with DAZN. If anybody's heard her on a call, she's truly very good. I wish actually they use her more and encourage her to speak a little more. Often she's the third person on the commentary team and isn't fully used to right effect. But she's back. I'm not going to complain about that. Hopefully she gets her business done and we get some fights made.
Have you paid attention to this fight, Daniel? If so, the keys for you.
My key is the layoff because that is a long layoff from McCaskill to be off, and unfortunately, Yubata, she fought fairly well against Candy, and yeah, that should have been a 3-card shutout, and she is the naturally bigger woman, but we have to remember McCaskill beat somebody that was considered pound for pound the best women's fighter in the world, and who's probably maybe still consider it. It's Cecilia Braekhus. So the layoff may not be a factor, but it's always a telling thing when it's more than a year. If it doesn't involve an injury, if it involves just money, then it messes with people's mind on it. It is going to be an interesting fight, and because of your bar's toughness, because of your bar size, it would not surprise me if she won.
And her story and her Barra story is quite fascinating. Again, go to Three Kings Boxing. You'll read one of my personal write-ups on her, detailing a horrific time that happened to her in March of 2020 when she was competing for at the Olympic boxing tournament in Mexico. Her son, who has a blood disorder, was had to be admitted to the hospital. She received a phone call in which a phone call in which her life was apparently, which she was told her life was in danger, was told to enter a van to what she assumed was to go to the authorities. Turns out she was kidnapped, right? And well, she was held against her will for nearly 24 hours. She was physically assaulted. Fortunately, uh, the real authorities were able to find her. She was able to escape. She tried, amazingly, this warrior spirit, the fighter spirit came out of her, was still in her despite the horrific event. Tried to get back into the Mexican boxing tournament, but because she was away, they denied her access, and she's used that as fuel. And you see to the point where she's now WBA mandatory challenger. And I think you put all of that into the equation, plus her skill. I think she has a heck of a chance. Put it this way: if she can get that stick going against McCaskill, and then she can force McCaskill, who can still make 140 pounds, she can still make 140 pounds. If she can get force McCaskill to fight backwards, it's a wrap. It's a wrap because McCaskill doesn't have to punch to hurt her. And I don't know if she has the physical size to push Ibarra back on a consistent basis. Again, I just think she has I think she has a heck of a shot, and I'm calling it right now. I know McCaskill is the favorite. She's the more high-profile fighter, but I think she's going down. I think she's going down Saturday night. I think Ibarra is going to beat her. Let's move on into the main event.
Prediction. Good for you.
And let's move on to the main event of this card in San Antonio. Hometown fighter here, Jesse Bam Rodriguez. We've talked about him for a while here on Pound for Pound Box Report. He makes the first defense of the WBC strap at 115 pounds against former two-time champion, Srisa Rungvisai. For those who do not know, strange developments in terms of how Rodriguez was able to get the belt. Sor Rungvisai was supposed to fight Carlos Cuadras for the then vacant WBC title. Srisikat had to bow out due to complications with COVID. Bam Rodriguez, who was fighting at 108 pounds, number one contender by the BA at 108. He got the call on 6 days' notice. His camp gambled, jumped up from 108 to 115, was very impressive in defeating Cuadras. Makes the first defense of that WBC title now against Sor Rungvisai. If Sor Rungvisai is on his A game, Daniel, he can win this. He could win this. At the very least, this has the potential to be a very good fight because Sor Rungvisai is still strong as a bull, even at 35, and he can still punch. Rodriguez is not going to be there. Is not going to be able to move him backwards in the same way that he was able to move Cuadras backwards in spots. He's going to have to box him. He's going to have to use his speed and his youth to get past the hardened Sor Rungvisai. On paper, a fascinating fight.
A very fascinating fight, and the key word is what version of Rungvisai are we gonna get? Because he has kept himself busy. When Nani was kept himself busy with these little 4-rounder fights in his native Thailand, just so he remains active. But talk about like trying to season your opportunity. You're now fighting the guy who technically took your spot. Granted, it was situations beyond his control, and ultimately beat the guy that beat you pretty badly in Cuadras. So this is going to be a very interesting fight because we should know by the first 3 rounds whether Rungvisai, whether his legs are there, whether his jab is there, whether his pressure is there. Because by that point, Bam will probably either start using his speed or if he senses a little bit of weakness, start setting up the way he set up Cuadras. focus on the jab, land with it to the body, have good counters for it. But it all depends upon what Rungvisai is looking. And for that weight class, he is a big guy. So that's going to be telling you how he's going to come in, especially recovering from COVID. We know recovering from COVID is not easy. Even months, even probably up to a year afterwards, it's not easy. So that is going to be telling to me. I think more than likely Bam will probably try to pull it out because even though Rungvisai is so strong and he is pretty strong for his weight class, the kid's probably just going to be a little bit too fast. Got to counter a little bit too much better. He's got to try to seize the opportunity when he can.
Because of the unknown factor that is so Rungvisai, you just don't know what fighter is going to show up. If it's the guy that we saw in his 2 fights with Roman and his first fight against Estrada, yeah, he is a very, very live dog. But if it's the fighter that we saw in the second fight against Estrada in subsequent form since the Estrada loss, Bam, he may be the smaller guy. He may be the guy with far less experience, but the talent just oozes out of him.
It really does. Having seen him up close ringside, he is incredibly impressive. You know, when I heard an interview with Robert Garcia quite a few years ago, at least it was pre-pandemic, not about Rodriguez. He was not talking about Rodriguez, but he volunteered in the interview. By the way, the best guy in my entire stable is Bam Rodriguez. And we all said, excuse me? Of all those guys you train, including Mikey, you're saying this kid, who was still a teenager at the time, is the best guy in your stable? You know what? He wasn't a liar. And there is nothing but upside for Rodriguez. Even if he loses to Rungvisai, it's one of those make your career Canelo versus Mayweather, learn from the loss under the spotlight kind of fights. He is going to be the naturally smaller guy. Yes, he has a fraction of the experience of Rungvisai. However, on the Rungvisai side of the ledger, he has been out of the ring mostly since that loss to Estrada. Yes, the record says he's had 3 fights, but that is 3 fights in 3 years, 15 rounds total among those 3, all in Thailand. Except for the fight against Run Run, he fought 2 no-names. One guy was 17-2, and he slaughtered him. The other fight was a guy who's had mainly fights in Thailand, 58 fights. Those guys just keep busy. I'm not sure those last couple of fights tell us anything. So rust is going to be a factor. Rust on top of age is going to be a factor. Time is not your friend, especially in the small weight divisions. We know, for whatever reason it is, we know it to be true. The younger fighters age faster in the ring. And so this is not on the plus side at all. So the last significant fight that Rungvisai had was that horrible, absolutely perplexing, what the hell are you thinking performance against Estrada, where he insisted on fighting, switching as as an orthodox fighter several times. It wasn't working. He continued to press it. I'm sure Estrada was thinking, what the hell is he doing? And it was just a horrible performance. I mean, just all around, wrong game plan. He was a deer in the headlights. So that last performance against Chocolatito, where he scored that shocking, absolutely stunning 4th round knockout out of nowhere, that's 5 years ago, folks. That's 5 years ago. I would argue that the prior fight with Rungvisai, the first one, I thought Roman Gonzalez won that fight. I was ringside for that fight. It was a very hard fought battle. And I firmly believe the fact that Gonzalez suffered such a bad cut in that fight, it looked horrible. It was really shocking to the audience at the time, had to have influenced the judges. I can only imagine. And that really was a razor thin win. That was a 114, 112 fight on 2 cards and a draw on the third. That's how close it was. So there's no downside for Rodriguez in this. He's in the main event again. He's daring to be great, taking a chance on himself. I do think that we're going to find a rusty version of Rungasai. I think youth will be such an asset to Rodriguez, and he's also got that fearlessness of youth. I don't think he's going to be intimidated being in the ring with Rungasai. So
too young and dumb to be scared.
Too young and dumb to be stupid, right? He believes in himself. I mean, you shouldn't be walking into that ring unless you have 100%, 150% belief in yourself. Bam Rodriguez has that. He walks in, he firmly believes he can win. He's got the tools, and we've now seen them. Robert Garcia was not lying. I do think he'll pull it off. We are really having a problem trying to sort out, if you only have 10 people on your pound for pound list, who the hell are you putting on the list? I mean, the logjam now at the top half and bottom half is getting fairly extreme. We're really having to work here. I'm really looking forward to this fight. It should be an all-action fight no matter what. Fans, don't miss this one.
Indeed. I can't wait. I might have to sneak and watch this on the phone at work. I want to thank, and I think we're going to start to shut things down on that note. I want to thank everybody in the chat for their comments and their questions, be it DCast, be it Life Is, Los Libertinos, from the Los Libertinos podcast. Who else was in here? Olaf, regular follower of the show. Thank you all for your comments and your questions. If you like what you heard this evening, if you listen to us live or even checking us out on a later date, please make sure to hit that like button. Also, make sure to follow us by hitting that subscribe button as well. It'll really help the overall algorithms and get us closer to being monetized. Going to go around the panel here. Begin the show with ladies first. Going to end the show with ladies first always. Gail from nyfights.com, Communities Digital News, for those who want to talk boxing, for those who want to talk media, because that is your profession. You do teach media on the side. Let the folks know where they can hit you up.
Easy to find me. I am at nyfights.com along with our mighty team at NY Fights. My last article was about the return of Virgil Ortiz Jr., who we will be talking about in the coming weeks. And you can also find me on all the socials. I tend to hang around on the cesspool known as Boxing Twitter, and I'm PR Pro San Diego.
And I'll go to you. And again, shout out to Los Libertinos. We're going to have to hit me up behind the scenes on Twitter so we can work something out. Again, we got to get some networking done. I think you've asked us, Gail and I, to appear on your podcast. We got to make that happen. I'll go to you, Daniel, from The Inscriber and For Boxing News. Please check out his podcast, The Inscriber, where he goes into detail about one Vince McMahon and his issues over there with the WWE. For those who want to talk boxing, for those who want to talk wrestling, professional wrestling, for those who want to talk the NBA, especially as it pertains to the Miami Heat. Let the folks know where they can hit you up.
Yes, folks, you could definitely find me at Rux99, RWKUZ99. Definitely catch me on there. And they said we're getting a good amount of boxing coming in, and we're also getting breaking basketball news. Bradley Beal is foregoing his option. He's now going to be a free agent. Tough break, Wizards.
Lakers, if you're smart, you try to pursue him. I'm just saying. You should try to pursue him. Forget Kyrie. That's just my opinion on that. For those who want to talk boxing, music, fitness. You know what it is with me on social, brother JR 76. Um, on Twitter, as I said at the beginning of the show. You can check out all things pound for pound box report. Please hit up the page p4pboxreport.com. Once again, if you want to email us with questions and comments, you can do so p4pboxing at p4pboxingreport.com. Please check out also on the site links to where you can donate. Got Cash Me, PayPal donation links there. Let donation be the best nation. Also links to where to check out the show all over the podcast realm. Want to check us out all over social media. We're everywhere: Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr. Also links to the YouTube channel and IG. Um, on the next episode, we will do a recap of what is a sizable and impressive card in San Antonio. Bam Rodriguez defending his WBC 115-pound belt against Sorong Lasai. MJ Madaliev defending his unified 122-pound titles against mandatory challenger Ronnie Rios. Julio Cesar Martinez going back down to 112 pounds, defending his WBC flyweight belt against McWilliams Arroyo. And Jessica McCaskill defending her undisputed welterweight titles against mandatory challenger Alma Ibarra. We will recap those fights, and we may talk about preview cruiserweight fight as Morris Bray is defending his IBF cruiserweight title over in Australia. Once again, I want to thank everybody who joined us in the live chat with their comments in the live public YouTube chat. Very lively discussion here. Not mad at it one bit. So for Gail and for Daniel, Gail from Communities Digital News and NY Fights, Daniel from the Inscribe and for Boxing News. I am your host, Michael. This has been episode 168 of the Pound for Pound Box Report. Again, thank you everybody for joining us. Everyone have a good evening, good night, and we'll see you next time.